You see, with the platform so smooth, keeps the workflow tight. Efficiency and value, I see every single night. Risk profiles, they got 'em, man, it's no joke. North America's the stage and they never choke. Metrics on point, updated without fail. Chameleon carriers, they're on the trail. Don't play with unsafe companies, don't be that guy. eCarrierChecks, keeping it safe under the sky. 40 plus filters with the search that can drive carrier information in the FMCSA archive. Find your carrier with precision and needs. Location, equipment feeds. They got the keys. FTL shipper leads. They're right there for you. Real-time authorities, what they do. Crazy, breezy, ultimates. The dashboards, way freedom from low boards. They got it every day. eCarrierChecks, the architect leading the way.
Hey, good morning, Jared and Nate on the eCarrierCheck show, talking some shop today, talking sales stuff. I'm excited for today. Obviously, Nate, we've had just an incredible week. Everyone's talking shippers. Everyone's wanting to get new businesses. Yeah. They're all fighting for their companies.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that attitude because that's the only way to go.
100%.
Right? We can't whine. How's the week been for you, man?
I mean, honestly, just everything kind of what you said. Everyone's finding those shippers. They're all dealing with the same thing as some of those rejections. They're hearing the same thing over and over.
Right.
So I got to hear some of those questions over phone calls this week, and I wrote them down.
I love
so we'll
that.
talk through some of those rejections.
I love that.
But yeah, hopefully today we can give some feedback that can maybe give some people some ideas on how to handle the rejections. So
yeah,
I'm excited
absolutely.
for today.
Yeah, we got on the phone with I don't know how many different brokers. Can we get a video of you two rapping?
The intro?
I tell you what, I wouldn't be opposed.
If you only knew. Yeah, we're rappers. So.
Honestly. Ryan, to be honest with you, we're actually doing a gender reveal today, and that's why we have blue and pink on. I'm just kidding. We're not. We're not. But boy, can you imagine? Holy cow.
I can't handle
rejection. I can't either, man.
It sucks.
Rejection sucks.
Yeah.
It's just brutal. And it was funny. We were talking to a guy, and he was going, "Are you talking about rejections for women?" And I was like, I'm a happily married man. Nate on the other hand, he knows women rejection better than anybody.
Yeah.
This guy, you got it going on, and I can't even imagine what you heard.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
And
you got all day.
You got all day. I love that. So this week, Nate, you and I have been on.
Oh gosh.
So many different cold call sessions with different brokers. Yeah. Let's make some calls. Let's go out and see what the world is. So we've been in the trenches. We've heard these.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Walk us through these because you heard them just as many as I did. Walk us through some of these rejections, and then let's walk through all of them, and then we'll walk through them individually and talk.
For sure. And if I've only got about 5 written down here. I'm sure if you guys have heard some. Hey, big boy.
That's the best. That's how you handle the objection right there.
Yeah, I appreciate that. But if you guys have some rejections that I don't name off, I'd love to hear them.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk through those. But one of the first one I started off here, a shipper saying we don't use brokers. We have dedicated lanes, or maybe they're customer routed. So that's number 2.
Yep.
We don't control the freights. That came in at number 3 today.
Yep.
Or we aren't setting up anyone at this time. Or they're currently good with the brokers they have.
Yeah.
And then obviously that starts leading to other thoughts as how can I quote a lane or things such of that nature.
A lot of different aspects there. I tell you what, we heard, am I calling the right shippers?
Yeah.
Am I calling the shipper at the right level? Should I be asking for the shipping manager? Should I asking for the CEO?
Right.
And then even that other question is. Am I calling the right shippers? But should I be calling smaller companies or bigger companies? What's going to make the most impact on our business, right? And I tell you what, just general observation, and we're going to break all these down. But general observation from all the calls this week was there must be some random Facebook group that I don't know about. It's only shipping managers only, right? It's shipping managers only. It's like OnlyFans.
Yeah.
And they just have these funny memes going on around saying, or just everybody that calls you, just say this exact word, and there's nothing you can do about it, right? We don't control our own freight. What do you even say to that?
Yeah.
Right? luckily you're on today. We're going to tell you what we're going to say.
Yeah.
But I love that. Juan's on. Rejection from your factoring company because the shipper you submitted takes more than 30 days to pay.
Wow.
That's a frustrating thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's a real issue.
Yeah.
You know, even the other day, somebody commented on our YouTube channel, and it said, I thought this was probably one of the more interesting. I wonder if I can find it. Let me see if I can find this real quick. But they said something around, you know, it takes time to find the right client.
Right.
And I commented back and I said, you know, it's not actually the amount of time to get a client. It's the fact that not all clients are right.
Mm. So
you could be calling. I've done this. I've called a shipping manager. This would have been 17 days. So this would have been from 17 until the end of 18. It was almost a full 24 months.
Right.
It was like 22. And I called and I just tried to get the guy on the phone for 22 straight months.
Yeah.
To find out when I have a conversation with this guy that he has nothing to do with the freight. You want to talk about rejection, Juan? You know, I get it. That sucks. You land a guy, you get a shipper, you're jacked up, and then your factoring company says you're out. Right?
Yeah. These rejections definitely play a lot on people that I've heard from. You know, it's like, how do I even respond?
Right.
Sometimes I feel like some people get so down in the dumps, they kind of quit calling. You know
I,
what I mean? Like,
I know.
I get it. I get it. It's
do
frustration. You're not sure where to go next. You're not even sure. Like we mentioned all those, right? It's a brutal world out there.
It is.
You know, those cold calls can be brutal. So
and right now, you know, the faucet from the shippers has been really tightened.
Yeah.
For them to let people in. But what's really massive is the amount of people coming through that pipe. Right. The amount of calls coming through the pipe is 100x.
Right.
So, you know, I'm reading a biography right now on Charlie Munger, and he's Warren Buffett's kind of right-hand guy. In fact, really wonderful story about him. And he talks a little bit about the fact that, you know, you don't necessarily want to do what everyone else is doing.
Right.
So today, I'm hoping I give everyone a way to zig while everyone's zagging. Yeah. Right? Yeah. We're zigging instead of zagging. Right. So if you got a good rejection, obviously there's quite a few people in here. Throw them in the comments. We'll chat through them. Hopefully we can solve them together as a community. I'm not the end all be all here. Right. I would love to learn if there's a better way to do these, but this is how I've been handling it.
Right. The one thing I love about this, Jared, and you, of course, is you've gone through a lot of these rejections, and you've thought of you're very creative in the way how to respond. You can acknowledge those rejections, yep, or think of a different way to maybe get the rejection off before they even tell you that rejection.
Right.
And I love, you know, those are just ideas that you've gained through years of brokering. So I'm really interested to see some feedback I get from you out of these questions.
Yeah.
Let's see where we go.
Yeah. Let's break it down. You know. The number one, and there's a few of these that are exceptional, right? You know, we don't use brokers. We have dedicated drivers. We aren't setting anyone up at this time. We're good with the brokers. Let's just chat about rejection in general. Before we dive into these, I think it's really important. You need to acknowledge the person that's rejecting you, right? And this could be whether you're dating, whether you're on a cold call, you know. Let's understand why they're objecting you, right? Or rejecting you, and there's objections in that conversation. Because, you know, again, you got to put yourself in their shoes.
Right. You got to build trust somehow.
You've got to build trust somehow, and this is the easiest way for them to get you off the phone, right? It used to be they would get an email, and they're like, holy cow. I remember when I first started, I could send out hook emails. And this is probably one of the more entertaining conversations, but I got to a point where I figured out how to send what I would call a hook email, right? And what I personally would do is I would get on these financial calls of these huge publicly traded companies, and I would listen to those and just wait for them to talk about operations and cost of goods sold and logistics, because it's in everything, every financial statement. And then I would write a hook and I would send it straight to the CEO.
Okay.
All right, we're going to talk about where to come in at. But one of my favorite sort of rejections, but also it got read was, and this has nothing to do with what this is, but I got to tell the story because it's really entertaining. I can show you this email.
Yeah.
Is I sent an email to the founder of FedEx, and I found his email, which was wild, by the way. I don't see rejection. I see it as a missed opportunity on their part. I totally agree.
Dang.
I absolutely agree. We're going to talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah.
But I sent this email to the founder of FedEx. The fact that I figured out his email is ridiculous.
Yeah,
some friggin' 30-year-old kid in Nebraska. Now I'm 40, by the way, so judge that for what it is. But the fact that a 30-year-old could figure out how to do that, I listened to his financial call, and you know what I wanted to do? This is so funny. So everyone started to resell, or not everyone, but there were multiple large brokerage that started to resell UPS freight rates. Okay. UPS went to them, I think Worldwide and Unishippers were one of them, where they said, hey, we'll give you a wholesale rate, give you a retail rate, away we go. And they started reselling these rates. So I was like, well, I'm good enough. I can do this.
Right.
So I hooked the friggin' CEO, founder of FedEx, his famous story of that he just put all the money in Vegas and ended up, that's how he cash flowed his business. He was completely broke, had just amount, went there, all this thing. So I sent this email, and no kidding, he responded with his secretary on there. And I'm looking this up. I'm like, what the hell? In fact, I used to work with Ryan when this came in. Yeah. He and I are in the basement of a law office, 0 windows. Like, this is ridiculous. Like, he and I feel like Frankenstein were just pieced together. It's just a hot potato. Yeah. Our coffee pot had pennies on it just to make sure that it was up enough to actually get it to brew. It's a crazy thing. And I send this email, and I get rejected, obviously. Right. But I was zigging instead of zagging. Right. And you have to do that same thing on the phone. Yes. Right? Yes. So long story short, got to talk to the founder through email. I'll show it to you. I still have it in my WOW file. If nobody has a WOW file, you have to have a WOW file because you're going to get some emails back every now and then or situations that come up that are like, what in the world? Right. But let's talk about the hardest one. Okay. I really like to eat the frog. I like to just grab the hardest one. And really, a lot of these are very similar. But when they say we don't control the freight, and that was the number one rejection that I heard this week. Okay. We made a lot of calls with a lot of different people, selling a lot of different services, and we don't control the freight was number one. Right. So what I liked to do when they said this, there's a couple different pivots that you can do. Number one, you probably didn't build up enough trust, and it's the easiest thing for them to say. Exactly. Right? A lot of shippers and a lot of people buying freight from them have taken over their own freight. They all think the same thing. Oh, that shipper's probably putting a margin in there. I can control my own freight, right? So I want to explain to you what the situation is here is if you think about it, let's talk through this from a higher level, okay? If this guy that just, manufactures, let's say that he manufactures, sidebars for a truck, right? Those big racks that they put the tool belts on, that's what they manufacture. They're getting in freight, right? They probably control their inbound, right? They're saying that they don't control their outbound because all of these people that are buying from them, fair enough. Yeah. So if that's the case, if they don't control their outbound, nothing wrong with that. Right. There's going to be a situation and a timing where that they do control their freight, or they have some loads that they don't have. The shipper, the person that bought the freight from them says, hey, why don't you guys just get a truck and let's move on? Right. Simple enough, right? Okay. So there's one or two ways to pivot here. Okay. Number one is you acknowledge. So, hey, we don't control any of our freight. Mr. Shipper, I completely understand. And what I'd like to do is, just because, and make sure you can say this quickly, right? For some odd reason, I say it better on the phone than I do right here, but that's neither here nor there. Yes. Is I always say, I completely understand. what I'd like to do is maybe just grab your email, send you some information on our customer or on us. And when there's an opportunity, we can be there for you in the win.
Right.
Okay. Now that requires a little bit more work in the afterthought.
Yeah, those follow-ups.
Yeah.
Like that, right.
So in that particular case, I guarantee you, in fact, there wasn't one person. I went 10 for 10. When they said this, I still got their email. Okay. I still got their email. And what I did is we sent just a PDF on culture. We didn't really say much in the email. I enjoyed the chat. We'll talk later.
Right.
Okay. Now, here's the follow-up for this. Next week, you need to send them an article on FreightWaves, off FreightWaves or off JOC or anywhere, and say, we're seeing this, just wanted you to be educated. No, nothing there, right?
Okay.
The week after, do the exact same thing. Okay? You're going to do this for a month because we have to build trust with this guy.
Right.
Whether he actually doesn't control it or not, you're just the guy on the other end of the phone that ended up talking to him, and he just wanted to get you off the phone. Right? Simple enough.
Right.
Okay. So there's the first way to respond.
Okay.
Hey, I completely understand you don't control it. Hey, would you mind if we just stay in touch for those situations where you do control some of your freight? I can send you some information on our company, and we'll be there waiting if you feel like there's a good time. Okay, there's the first bit.
Okay.
The second way to handle this is, well, I completely understand that you don't control your outbound. Maybe who would I talk to in your company about some of the purchasing and freight that's coming in, so we could talk about how your freight does come in.
So the inbound.
We're talking.
Okay.
We're flipping over to inbound.
Okay.
Right now, sometimes when you pivot like that, it puts people off.
Okay.
So you can either A, pivot to that inbound, or B, pivot to the first side of it, and then pivot your communication later to inbound.
Okay.
A majority of shipping managers don't necessarily control the inbound.
Right.
It's usually somebody in purchasing or procurement or something like that,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Okay.
So it's really important that A, we still have to identify that we haven't built up enough trust. And you're going to build up enough trust by being that guy that sends him random things.
Yeah.
And that could be something comical. That could be a meme about shipping managers. See if they got a good, if they got a good heart on them, then it's okay to use a little bit of humor. But there's not much you can do when they say you don't control your own freight. You just kind of shut down, right? So acknowledge it, grab their email, and then see if you can build trust.
I like that. I like that because not every email on that follow-up you're not trying to sell. You know what I mean? You're trying to provide them some value that they maybe, or educate them like you said. So I like that. I like that you're not being too aggressive to them. I think that's a good way to build some trust.
Right.
Why might, you mentioned about the inbound part, why might that put someone off?
They probably don't necessarily want to take the time to talk about it.
Okay.
Right.
Right.
You got to think if they're, making these, these boards, right? These metal boards for trucks, right? They probably control their own freight in if they're not allowing it to go out that way, right? They're thinking the exact same thing that their customers are all thinking.
Right.
Sometimes, in fact, to be honest with you, going after the inbound sale may be the zig instead of the zag.
Right. Okay.
Everybody says this. I got trucks in the area. Don't say that again, for the love of friggin' God. I've got, relationships with people. There's a lot of, hey, let me give you a quote. If you call them and say, hey, here's what I do is we actually get into Wisconsin on a fairly regular basis. Now, I really would like to talk to somebody about your inbound and see if there could be an opportunity to help somebody. Change up the way you're selling because everybody's asking for outbound.
Yep.
Why not look for that inbound? Because of the fact that shippers are giving up control of some of their freight, right?
Yep.
These people that are buying that freight. In fact, I've talked to a lot of different people this week. And one of the conversations was with somebody that particular person had an incredible relationship with, had a previous past with them. He went from this company to this company and called them and said, hey, how can I get into your supply chain? And that guy even said, hey, just so you know, about 80% of our freight now is actually controlled by the customers. We only control about 20%. It's a little bit different when we used to work with each other. So I got an actual very vulnerable conversation. I got exposed to hearing an actual shipping manager talking about that.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
So This is the hardest one. We don't control the freight, and you just got to be ready on your feet to say, hey, I completely understand. What I'd like to do is at least be in the, just off to the sideline. If there is a moment where I can jump in and help you, maybe even give you just some quotes, right? Something to kick around. We don't control the freight. That's how I'd handle it.
Right. I love those. Honestly, we talk to so many new brokers, in this industry. I think you have to really deal with these rejections to kind of get comfortable with how to, respond. So,
right.
For those of you out there that haven't, called, I get it. It's nerve-wracking, or you're afraid you might say something wrong. Just try to pick up that phone. Maybe you should hear a rejection once in a while.
Record yourself in
yeah.
that rejection moment.
Mm-hmm.
Because you got to get good at taking that rejection and spinning it without losing, the couple kids that I was calling with. I'm going to call them kids for the moment. They were 23 and 21, just jumping into being a broker.
Yeah.
And, the second they heard that, okay, thanks for your time. And they just went away, and it's like, okay, what was the action item we're hoping for? Right. And there's a lot of different ways to handle this. In fact, we'll talk about another one here is we just don't use brokers. Right. And what I like to do in that particular case is we don't use brokers. What I really like to do in this particular case is no different than sort of, that we don't control the freight situation, is acknowledge them, right? And then try to ask sort of a hard question for them to respond to, and say, I completely understand you don't work with brokers. It sounds like you might have had a situation that with a broker that didn't work out right. Is that correct? And they'll either say yes or no, and majority of the time they're going to say yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I love that one. It's actually when we, I can't remember who broker it was. They sent a recording, and the shipper, plain out simple, said, "I don't trust brokers. A bad time."
Yeah.
You know what he said? He goes, "Tell me what happened. What went on with that broker to where it made you not trust them?"
Right.
So they actually had that conversation. At the end of the phone call, this broker actually got that shipper's email.
Yep.
And they're chatting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Trying to build that trust. So
yeah,
I've definitely heard that one.
Yeah.
From a recording. So that's pretty cool.
In any rejection, I think there's got to be action items that you're hoping to get accomplished with every sales call. You're either trying to get their email, right? You already got their phone number, you got their name,
right?
You're through that part of the sales process. But either you're trying to say, hey, would you have 10 minutes next week where we could sit down and talk about your supply chain, some of the challenges that you may be facing, some of the things that you feel like you're pretty good at, and see if there could be a fit between our companies in somewhere in there, right? And either you want to get their email and start to build trust, or B, just go straight to that 10-minute meeting, right? So, hey, we don't use brokers. Hey, you know what? I completely understand. What I'd like to do is take 10 minutes maybe next week where we could at least educate you on what we're seeing from a freight broker standpoint and the use of a proper freight broker relationship versus using asset-based carriers. And I'm not looking to upset or redirect any freight from any of the current relationships you have. What I'd like to do is be there when they just can't fill in and there's a tough lane they don't want to go to. Holy shit, that rolled off.
I'm going to have to clip that.
Well, now I cussed. I don't know what to tell you. But you see where I'm going with that. And all you have to do, let's be honest, get on FreightWaves, get on JOC, get on all of these huge information platforms. Watch the Freight Coach. This guy's got so much information, right? And come up with 2 to 3 things that people are predicting or people are saying that are potentially going to happen here as we go, right? And say, this is what we do, and put it on a nice PDF, put your logo on it, and give them a 10-minute education.
Yes.
Provide them value.
Yeah. We heard that quite a bit from Charles Mundy at ELLC, Exodus Logistics Learning Center. He's huge on educating yourself. I don't think some of these shippers are out there reading FreightWaves, right? So this is where a broker can come in and add that value and educate them. Yeah. And I think that helps build trust. And like you said, maybe set up that meeting to talk through those pain points and what you're seeing. So I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. There are rejections where you just can't do anything. You know what I mean? It's not going anywhere quick. We aren't setting anyone up at this time. my story where I called somebody for 22 months, right? Was that situation. We're not setting anyone up. Yeah. And then there was the bounce of all the friggin' rates. And they started seeing rejections, and their current carriers couldn't keep doing things. And so my timing was right.
Right.
You know what I mean? When somebody says we aren't setting anyone up at this time, this is that shipper starting to turn the faucet off. They don't want any more calls. This is the easiest thing for you to do. Right. Okay. I personally got through a couple of these, and we did one on a cold call show a couple weeks ago where we talked about, hey, I'm not necessarily wanting to get set up. What I'd like to do is at least educate you on some software that we're using that maybe you could use in order to vet the carriers that are coming on your dock. Remember that cold call? Yep. And that lady ended up sending me through, which ended up turning out to be a client.
Right.
So when you're thinking about, hey, I got a truck in your area, or I'm in that area all the time, or maybe just educate them on what you actually do. Hey, I got some incredible software. Here's how we can help you. Everybody has incredible software, but how many people are selling it? You know what I mean?
Sure,
Everyone's got visibility and vetting and all this crazy stuff. Check out eCarrierCheck.com. No, I'm just kidding. I just want to screw with you. But at the end of the day, these shippers don't know necessarily how good a tools you have. Right?
Well, I mean, even last week when we were at that cold calling sesh, and the broker called that shipper, and she goes, "You're the 20th broker," and this is 10 in the morning. You're like the 20th broker that's called today. Yeah. That was kind of a rejection right there.
Right.
Hey, you're the 20th broker. That lady was probably trained to start telling brokers, "Hey,
gotta go.
Right. You're the 20th guy."
Right. One of my favorite, and this is kind of just a sub rejection, by the way. One of my favorite, shameless plug. I know. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I appreciate that. I appreciate the call. And we just lost everybody else. They're like, fuck this guy. So one of my favorite is, we're good at, good with the brokers that we're currently having, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes just getting past the first person is hard enough. Yeah. Because if you say, can I talk to somebody in shipping? The next question is almost a question-based rejection. Well, what is this regarding?
Yes.
And you've got to be on your toes for that particular question, right? So one of those things that I would definitely, put in there is, we do, and if you say something that may just be a notch above what their experience or knowledge level of shipping is, you usually get by.
They're like, let me get you to the right person.
Yes, right? If you just say, well, I'm looking to get set up as a carrier, they're going to tell you, you just went down this road. Mm-hmm. But if you answer that question with, well, we help shippers like yourself actually do price comparisons on different carriers that are on the market currently right now, and we'd like to see if we could talk to somebody in shipping to give them that price comparison. Holy buckets. It's just coming out, right? So you see where I'm going with that. It's one of those things where you've got to just be up just a little bit different. Yes. And I'll be honest with you, when it was the audacity to plug that in, Shave throws tomatoes in the common square. I appreciate that, Nerf. What's up, brother? Thanks for being on. I appreciate that. But if you can just be ready with that comment. Does that make sense?
Yes.
We're not saying anything different than we already do. Right now, if you get to the shipper and he says, hey, we're good with the brokers we currently have, what do you say then? I'm a big believer, again, in acknowledging it, letting them have their relationships. But we're not trying to disrupt any of that.
Right.
All we're wanting to do is give them the understanding is what their baseline now, what their reality of the baseline of that particular freight level, is that what we would quote.
Yeah. So you basically want to come in saying, hey, I completely understand. You don't want to take business away from anyone, but you also want to see where you're coming in at, maybe a cheaper price, things like that, right?
Let me baseline you. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's that simple.
Right.
Your rates right now are all over the damn place.
Gosh, yeah.
But a majority of carriers, the rates are lower than what their costs are. Right? Their costs are at a different level. And I can tell you right now, I mean, we've seen This week was nuts. We saw, freight going for $1.05 a mile, $1.10 a mile for full loads into certain lanes.
Crazy.
Right? And so, if shippers, aren't at least acknowledging, well, am I getting a good baseline right now? That baseline objection, wonderful. Right. Hey, I completely understand the carriers and brokers you're working with. What I'd like to do is just give you a baseline of where we would be at. If you'd like an opportunity, I can give you a couple quotes on something that you're moving in the next week. Right. So there's that. I do want to give a couple of things that worked for me this week that are kind of the secret weapons, not necessarily with rejections. Okay. My mind works a little bit different than some others, especially in sales situations.
Yeah.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
And what I noticed is if I call someone with some sort of storytelling concept, even if you use rollerblades, my CPM would be $1.06 a mile. So $1.05, I can't help move that freight. Yeah. Nerf, it's crazy. We saw some van lanes this week where it was a race to the bottom, and literally, and no kidding, it was right at $1, and and that was definitely a 53-foot rollerblade rolling down the road.
That broker was speechless.
It was wild, and there was still room. I was wild. I mean, it definitely a different situation. The lane, by the way, was Texas into California vans. But something that I noticed when I would talk to people, and I actually got past every gatekeeper and had a very productive conversation with every shipping manager every time I did this, right? And this only comes because I had experience with this prior to me jumping into software. Is the brokerage that I used to work for, it used to have the most incredible project-based logistics division in the entire world. Right? What Ryan Holiday does, I don't even know if he's still watching, but what Ryan does is phenomenal, right? This guy does project work and kills it. Yeah. And when he comes in and says, hey, I've got these projects coming into your area in a couple weeks, and I'm doing some pre-planning and some proactive approaches of finding some people that may be able to send my guys back to where I'm trying to go to. Right. Boy, when you start to reference, I'm not here for today, I'm here for tomorrow, I'm here for 2 weeks, everybody's guards just kind of, they just all slow down. Yeah. It's not about today.
They realize you don't want something right now, right away.
Exactly. It's not about today. I'm looking for a relationship. Right. So in some way or another, when you're communicating to those shippers, coming in and saying, hey, I know everything's about timing, but I've got some projects coming up in your area that'll be in about 2 weeks, month, 60 days. And I'm just doing some proactive calling and seeing if I can find somebody that has some freight that I can partner with and start to build a relationship with.
Beautiful. Yeah.
It's way more genuine. Yeah. We're trying to have a conversation. Right. It's not like, can I quote something today? Yeah. Woo! That's so much high more. How do you take a high pressure setting and just throw the water on it so it sizzles it out? That's where you're going right there.
Yeah, come off a little less aggressive and
slow that aggressiveness down. I know everybody needs money. Yeah. I know everybody needs a shipper. We got to get a place where you can start to make some of those calls, but be a little bit proactive 60, 90 days from now, right? At least you may have better conversations. Yeah. Because everybody's guard up. Nobody trusts anybody.
I know.
Everybody hates to have a frigging conversation. Nobody wants to pick this damn thing up. We got to make phones great again. Yeah. And we got to start to build and rebuild relationships because trust is gone. Everybody's freaking out. There's fraud to all in all. Every damn news article. If you read the news, it's like my dad watching Fox all day. Yeah. Gosh dang. I can't handle a conversation with the guy. You know what I mean?
Right. So to be honest, I'm starting to see a lot more people too starting to go door to door sales. Because they're having that trouble. Yep. I think they speak better face to face, which is awesome. Yeah. Like, more power to you. Go do it. You know what I mean? So I love that people are starting to get back into door-to-door sales. Yeah. Get out of their house. Get out of their house. Let's go see what's around you.
Put on something nice. Yeah. Shave.
Yeah.
Look presentable. Right. And it, I still wear a beard, but it's cleaned up. Right. Mm-hmm. Just clean yourself up and walk in a door and try to be genuinely interested in what they do. Right. You help people get to their goals, they'll help you get to yours.
Right.
Old Zig Ziglar.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So when you were brokering, we talked about, am I talking to the right shippers? How do you know if a shipper's right for you? You know what I mean?
That's a great question. And sometimes you don't know until you try it out for a few times, right? I would suppose it's like dating nowadays, right? There's two ways of dating, and it would be no different than with shippers, right? The first one is, boy, in person, they are attractive, right? Well, on a piece of paper, on a website, they are a huge shipper, right? They're attractive, huge shipper. We're just going to keep the dating thing going. But you don't know what that girl, you have to be attracted to somebody, but you don't know what her values are. You don't know what her beliefs are. You don't know what the culture is that she grew up in, and to see if that's a fit. And you probably aren't going to know that until the second or third date. Right? We're just bringing
a dating show, right?
We're just a dating show. But that same concept is with shippers. If I get in, I'm set up.
Yeah.
What if they don't pay you for 60 days? What if they're really hard to communicate with? What if, there's so many different things. Maybe their belief system is every 90 days they turn over their broker and carrier mix. They aren't looking for a long-term relationship. Their philosophy is this, right? So you can see the hot girl, you can see the hot guy, right? Depending on who's watching. I don't know what our balance is with people, but you don't know what their beliefs are. You know what I mean? And that's same with shippers. You don't know necessarily if they're a good fit. And Juan mentioned this earlier. He walks in, gets a guy. I think Juan's doing face-to-face. Yeah, right? Juan is, gets a guy, and then his current partner is like, they don't pay their bills fast enough for us to be a factoring company.
Right.
Boy, that breaks your heart.
Yeah.
You feel rejected after winning. Yeah. After winning, you feel rejected, right? Yeah. And being vulnerable to those rejections, being vulnerable to those relationships, you just got to be open to just having a conversation and seeing if you're a good fit for those people, right? So that's an interesting one. I don't know if I'm calling the right shippers. In my opinion, I'll tell you who I like to call as far as shippers, and this is just a tactical, concept. I don't want to call the rolled steel company. I want to call the guy that makes these baseboards for the back of the truck. I want to be a little bit further down the line in the supply chain, right? I don't want to call a lumber, a company that's just pulling forests out. I want to call the guy that actually makes decking, right? I like this layer better than this layer. This layer is so penetrated with people and brokers and carriers, and their rates are usually a little bit more competitive, right? This layer's tough. This layer, there's money to be made. There's money to be made up here too, but you're doing a lot more of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. A few of the things that I've noticed too is, who is the right shipper to be calling? Is it a shipper that is using flatbed carriers, drive-in? Is it a shipper that moves, 10 loads a day, or maybe 100 loads a day, or maybe 500 a week, right?
Right.
So there's a lot to kind of think and understand. Am I ready for this kind of thing, right?
Right.
So it's important to prepare yourself, do your research, and
right.
Thank goodness with eCarrierCheck you can see all that. Right?
You
can see the type of carriers they're utilizing. You can see their mega volume, low volume.
Yeah. The best shipper is the shipper that values you.
Yes. Yeah. That's a good point.
And that valuation, it can be quick. It could be the guy that likes 100 and you and him connected. Yeah. It could be the guy that only has 10 shipments a week. Yeah. But you got to find and turn over a lot of rocks in order to find those people. Yeah.
So, sometimes you got to have those conversations with the shipper. This ain't working out.
Right.
But you got to take care of yourself first.
Exactly. We kind of hit on a lot of different talking points. Holy cow, we could cut this video in a lot of different ways. I'd sure be open to any questions anybody has or thoughts on these, but rejections are coming in hotter than anything. So make sure that you're recording yourself. There's some other aspects here that we'll come in and start to talk about and go from there. So.
Yeah, for sure. I just think that's important to pick up the phone, kind of deal with those rejections. I think back to my last job when I was calling all these kids' parents trying to offer my services.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, the women are the maid of the house.
Yeah.
Let me talk to my wife. Let me talk
Yeah.
to my wife. I wasn't calling the right person.
Right.
Let me get your wife's phone number. Let me talk to her.
Oh, decision makers, right?
Decision makers.
Yeah.
So, and that's something I had yesterday is how can I get to that right person?
Boy, that's probably one of the harder things to get to is, if you ask the question, who's making the decisions for your shipping?
Yeah.
Sometimes that can become an offensive question, right? Depending on who's on the phone.
Right.
And so it's such an interesting question. And I'm a big fan, if you want to go down that road, just start at the top. Yeah. Now, are you going to get the CEO of Sam's Club on? Probably not. But at a mid to small size shipper, absolutely you can. With the right, choose your own adventure in the wording, you can get there. It's just a matter of working that situation. But getting to the right person is probably the most challenging. And sometimes getting to the right person is the easiest way at the gatekeeper saying, hey, I'd like to talk to somebody that handles and makes decisions for logistics or shipping, right? And depending on what she or he does, it could be a situation where she gets pissed off and is like, I've heard this call before. Yeah. Or she may be like, yeah, you need to talk to Jeff. He does all the contracts, right? So, and that was something that I would like. I always, I would like to even word it just a little bit different and say, hey, we work with a lot of different contracts specific to around logistics. Who would I talk to in regards to those logistics contracts? And all of a sudden people are like, well, what do you do? I'll get you to somebody.
Yeah. What did you just say?
Yeah, exactly. I'll get you to somebody, right? And they know not to send you to the guy that's loading the truck. Right. They know to send you to the guy that's actually above that guy. Yeah. For sure. Right. So when you say it like that, you can definitely get around that situation, get to the right person.
Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
For sure.
Let's wrap us up, man. I'm down for today. We had a lot of meat today, a lot of beef. A couple shameless plugs, but we're definitely here trying to build some value for you guys. So, because we know it's tough out there. Yeah. I've been in the trenches all week and listened to it and hear it. And
I mean, we're hearing these over the phone calls, constantly. What I mean? And, this is great content because we want to, help you and, do our best to kind of give you some ideas to be creative. That's what it is. A lot of it's creativity, which I love. So, but yeah, no, thanks for some of the input there, Jared. Yep. Your time in the industry is truly helping people that are watching. So I appreciate that. Yeah. Next week, we're going to have the Bodacious Cowboy on.
Ooh, I like this. Jeff Dickinson. This guy's insane.
Yeah. So check out his LinkedIn. Yeah. Great value.
Yeah. So much value.
To have him on. Yeah. So, check us out next week on Friday. Of course, we'll go live again Wednesday. But check us out. Reach out to us. Sign up for a demo. We got a demo next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern. Yep. Let's talk about your journey. How can we help you?
Yeah. Let's try to grow. Let's try to grow. We're all here doing what we do.
Yeah. So anyways, guys, have a good weekend. Stay safe, stay warm wherever you're at. So